Well, sticking with that story, the national security analyst Arash Aramesh joins me now from Houston in Texas. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Arash. And can you explain why President-elect Donald Trump would choose Nigel Farage, a politician here in the UK, before actually meeting the Prime Minister here?
Nigel Farage represents pretty much the same set of ideals, or at least populist sentiment, that Mr. Trump either represented or tried to represent or rode the waves to winning an electoral victory in the United States. Both men are staunchly anti-immigration. Both men happen to be protectionist when it comes down to the economic views. Both men happen to be anti-traders. Both men happen to have certain isolationist streaks in their foreign policy and economic views. So to see that he has reached out, and by the way, let's not forget that Nigel Farage came to the United States and campaigned for Mr. Trump, which was sort of odd to see a foreign politician coming here campaigning in our presidential election. But again, there are a lot of similarities between the two men, not to mention they're both pretty wealthy, which is sort of kind of at odds with their populist sentiment.
Now, looking at what's going on in America, there's a backlash over these elections. Protests are still continuing in cities across the country. Any sign of them letting up?
Perhaps not. First and foremost, people have an absolute First Rights Amendment for peaceful assembly, for protest, for free speech. Mr. Trump won this election fair and square. Let's not joke about the legitimacy of this election. When it comes down to the Electoral College, winning state by state, Mr. Trump won more electoral votes and he won the election. He is now the president-elect. However, Mrs. Clinton has won over 603,000 more votes. So she is ahead in the popular count. And that it's quite clear to see that, after such a divisive campaign, after such harsh rhetoric used by both candidates, and especially after such rhetoric used by Mr. Trump, so many Clinton supporters are upset, and especially now they feel aggrieved because they think that their candidate, for whom I voted, by the way, just to be very transparent here on TV, that she got more votes, but yet she lost the election. But to be completely transparent, we have the rules. The rules are at the Electoral College, and Mr. Trump won the election according to the rules, whether I like it or we like it or not.
So after a couple of days of shock, Donald Trump is now getting down to business, choosing the people he's going to be taking to the White House with me. Tell us more about that.
I'd like Mr. Trump to convince the American people that he represents all of us. I'd like Mr. Trump to convince us that the rhetoric that was used in the campaign that could have been perceived as sexist, misogynist, racist, so on and so forth, was not exactly the best of Mr. Trump. I'd like him to make certain appointments to prove that. Unfortunately, so far, he hasn't done that. One of his key appointments so far has been Mr. Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is someone who was sort of chased out of the Republican Party a few years back. He belongs to what we call here the alt-right movement. The alt-right movement is pretty close to some people who would be considered as white nationalists or white supremacists here in the United States. Crazy conspiracy theorists, some people who actually thought that 9/11 was an inside job, and also that they think that the government is undertaking a genocide against white people. And not only that, Steve Bannon has a very, very mixed bag in terms of, mixed personal bag of, political views and political sort of reputation. So appointing Stephen Bannon as senior advisor to the president, who is, going to be pretty much the second most important person after the chief of staff in the White House, is a terrifying signal to the rest of the society and the rest of the country that has hoped for Mr. Trump to at least try to be a uniter and a unifier and not a divider. And we also saw Reince Priebus, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, to become a chief of staff of the White House. At least Mr. Priebus has a track record. He does not belong to the fringes of American politics. But I'm very concerned with Steve Bannon's appointment as special counsel or senior advisor to president, and the viewers can just look him up and go on his page and see a lot of controversial and racially aggressive comments that Mr. Bannon has uttered in the past several years, a very reason why he was chased out of his own party, the Republican Party. And so that is very concerning. But again, despite political differences, I'd like to mention a few names that are actually going to be, at least we know who they are. I strongly disagree with, for instance, General Mike Flynn, but I think he's a patriot, despite our disagreements over policy. I think Lieutenant General Mike Flynn is going to be someone who's going to bring in a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge with him to the job, be it Department of Defense if they get him a waiver, or be it National Security Advisor or something along those lines. But policy differences don't necessarily frighten us or frighten me. What frightens me and really disappoints me is when President-elect Trump chooses someone so on the fringes of American society that he rubs shoulders with white supremacists in America, and that is terrifying.
Okay, Arash Aramesh, really good to talk to you. Over the next few days, I'm sure we'll find out a little bit more about Donald Trump's administration. Thanks so much.